Hi, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Luke, and today we're going to discuss the rise and fall of Francisco Franco. In the turbulent pages of history, few figures have left as lasting an impact on a nation as Francisco Franco, the merciless Spanish general and dictator. According to Franco's biography in Encyclopedia Britannica, he was born on December 4th, 1892, in Ferrol, Spain. Franco would rise from humble beginnings to become one of the most influential, controversial, and brutal leaders of the 20th century. Francisco Franco grew up in the picturesque region of Galicia, where his father, Nicolas Franco, served as a naval officer. His family would temporarily live on the sea during the summer months. Raised in a strict Catholic and middle-class household, young Franco was instilled with the values of discipline, loyalty, and patriotism from a very young age. It was here that his military aspirations took root, fueling his desire for a career in the armed forces. In 1907, at the age of 14, Franco enrolled at the military academy in Toledo. He was frequently picked on for his small size and also being the youngest in his class. Despite this, he was determined to become a military officer like his father. He endured and graduated from the academy in 1910. Franco's military career after his graduation from the academy was quite eventful. He served in Morocco and other Spanish colonial holdings in Africa. He was decorated for his sacrifices, but it wouldn't be until the dawn of the Spanish Civil War where he would put his leadership skills, brutal tactics, and ideals into full effect. The Spanish Civil War erupted in 1936 and tore the country apart. It pitted Franco's nationalists against the Republican government. Over this time, many atrocities were committed. From 1936 to 1939, Franco would commit something called the White Terror, where he killed over 200,000 Spaniards. The Republicans would do something similar with the Red Terror, where they also killed tens of thousands of priests, nobility, and famous politicians. Both sides would burn down convents, monasteries, and churches to display their power. But in the end, the nationalists emerged triumphant with the help of Nazi Germany and fascist Italy, who also aided Franco's government in civilian bombings, as displayed in Picasso's painting, Guernica. After the Spanish Civil War, Franco wanted to...
Your time is up.
Hey! It's still my part, Hugo. What are you doing here?
Okay, you don't understand this, but this is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship.
No!
Come on.
No!
Okay. Okay, now that the real Spaniard is back, let me explain who Franco really was. After the Spanish Civil War, Franco wanted to return Spain to its grandeur. However, he was the leader of an exhausted country, still divided internally and impoverished by a long and costly war. During the first decade of his regime, Franco was very strict. He treated anybody who was a Republican like a parasite that had to be exterminated. He executed 50,000 and sent many to concentration camps. My family was heavily affected by Franco's regime. At the beginning of the Civil War, nationalists and Republicans were forcing people to join their army, and anybody who abstained was killed. For instance, my great-grandpa was forced to join the Republican side, even though he did not want to fight. When Franco won, he was sent to Gurs, a concentration camp in France. The conditions there were really harsh, and many died. My great-grandpa contracted typhoid disease, and he almost died from that. And eventually, Franco sent an order to execute him, even though he did not commit any crime that went against Franco's dictatorship. However, an anonymous priest sent a letter to the executioner saying that my great-grandpa was a good man and he did not do anything against the regime. He was then released and was able to return home with his wife. Many other people were not as lucky as my great-grandpa, and ended up being executed just for being affiliated to the Republican side, even if they did not do anything that went against Franco's dictatorship, demonstrating the totalitarian and brutal conditions during Franco's regime. According to the website from the History Channel, Franco essentially made Catholicism the only tolerated religion, banned the Basque and Catalan languages outside the home, forbade Catalan and Basque names for newborns, very liberal unions, and promoted economic self-sufficiency policies and created a secret police network to spy on citizens. Although he declared that Spain was neutral during World War II, he sent 50,000 volunteers to fight alongside the Germans on the Soviet front. Franco also opened his ports to German submarines and invaded Tangier in Morocco. The most challenging period of Franco's regime was after World War II, when the United Nations ostracized his dictatorship as he became the most hated Western head of state. He had to face many economic isolationist policies, but as the Cold War erupted, this began to thaw due to his anti-communist views. In the Britannica Encyclopedia, it is also mentioned that in the 50s and 60s, he then started to become more liberal. He increasingly avoided political affairs, preferring instead to hunt and fish. Police controls and press censorship began to relax, strikes and protests became more common, free market reforms were introduced, tourism increased, and finally, Morocco gained its independence. The Spanish dictator provided continuity to his government after his death in 1975 by assigning Prince Juan Carlos, the eldest son of the nominal pretender of the Spanish throne, as his official successor upon his death. Though Juan Carlos had spent a good time alongside Franco and publicly supported his regime, he pressed for change immediately upon taking power, including the legalization of political parties. The first post-Franco election was held in 1977, and Spain has remained democratic ever since, except in the coup that happened in 1981. Franco reconstructed Spain after the Civil War and left a legacy that continues today. There was massive economic growth across all the major sectors in Spain from 1959 to 1975, with 6.5% of the GDP increasing each year. Forbes even states that Franco's regime was an economic miracle, and other authors such as Gabriel Jackson believed that Spanish fascism could be a model for other nations. Moreover, Franco reorganized the education system, making it mandatory for children to attend school. He also established private property rights and workers' rights. He made pay vacation for employees mandatory and expanded social security in Spain. He also made the government in charge of making private property accessible to every single Spaniard. These laws are still being implemented in Spain and can be found in the Boletín Oficial del Estado, which is the official gazette of Spain. Franco's reconstruction efforts and the policies he implemented laid the foundation for Spain's modern development and continued to shape its society. Currently, Franco's regime in Spain is still very controversial. His regime was marked by brutal repression and the killing of tens of thousands of people, but he created economic growth, improving Spain's living conditions. Most of the population views his mandate as illegitimate and want to eliminate aristocratic titles linked to it and include accounts of Franco's repression in school textbooks. However, many Spaniards also believe that Franco was the only one, that Spain is still a united nation and not living in poverty. making him one of the most controversial leaders in history. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you haven't become too fascist after watching this video.
Democracy! Yeah!